Wherefore, Series 3, Episode 1. This is the story of how you became what? What are you becoming? Do you know yet? You always had a suspicion that there was more to you than meets the eye. You weren't arrogant enough to assume that you were always meant for greatness, but a person can be significant or special without that level of self-importance. You are the sort of person who doesn't really believe that being marvellous is a scarce possibility only a few can be blessed with. You think we all have potential. Figuring out what you might be is a bit of a process. What do you become? Have you found a second skin? Do you cavort in the moonlight as a were-auroch? Or a were-rhubarb, for that matter? Are you leafy and unlikely? Can you summon into your body some wondrous ancient creature otherwise lost to the world? Can you fill an ecological niche by shape-shifting into position? Or are you becoming a wizard? Perhaps there was always some small tingle of magic in your fingertips. There were things you always did with uncanny skill or unreasonable success. They probably didn't look like conventional superpowers. You don't walk on water or swim through the earth, but perhaps your jams have strange, seductive powers. Or you were able to slide unnoticed through a crowd even when dressed as a clown. Do you have a sense of what the birds are saying? Do badgers appear to you as auspicious omens? There are as many ways of being a wizard, as many ways as there are wizards, in fact. One of the consequences is that people do not always recognise their own magical potential simply because they've never seen anything else that looks like them. So they write it off as a coincidence, a fluke, something a bit funny that cannot be explained but certainly isn't important and does not mean anything. The world is full of potential wizards who have yet to figure out that they might be truly special and important and urgently needed. You've been getting a sense of this for a while. You feel the urgency all too keenly. You have seen the state of the world and you know that something must be done. You haven't quite made the connection between what must be done and the things you alone can do. But you will. You're on that path now. And your own magic is becoming visible to you, even if you aren't yet ready to call it magic. It may be a while before you feel comfortable identifying as a wizard on these terms, and maybe that's not the right word for you anyway. Maybe there is some other more subtle name for what you are. The name that calls to you and gives you feelings that are hard to explain. That name. It's also possible that you're underway to becoming a weaver. I've been dropping hints about that for some time now because weavers are in desperately short supply and this is a problem. It's why I've been talking to you so much about what weavers do and how it works. In theory, anyone could become a weaver because everyone weaves at least a little bit just by being alive. In practice, very few people go that way because it calls for certain kinds of care and attention, and frankly it can be hard going. Weavers are by nature overthinkers. They are the people who look at a situation and see 10 different ways it could play out and then try and find strategies for dealing with the several ways in which it could go wrong, alongside plans for how to build on the good outcomes. Where you see a couple of people having afternoon tea, a weaver sees a complex mix of possibilities that have the scope to be life-changing. What makes a person into a weaver is that they then act. They take the possibilities they prefer and they make those real. It's a heady mix of will and action. Most of the time you can't just will the threads of reality into doing what you wanted. You have to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty as well. Reality is more susceptible to action than to intention. To be a weaver, you have to want things to be different and you have to be willing to meddle and able to trust your own vision of how to change things. You have to be anxious enough to pay attention to all the details and bold enough to know when and how to take the great leaps of possibility. Why does it matter? Well, may you ask. What reason could there be to make such ongoing interference necessary? It is a tricky one to explain. What it comes down to is that everything is affected by having attention paid to it. You may have run into this around the sciences, the cats in boxes and all the rest. Science tells us that reality is impacted in some way by the presence of an observer. But it's deeper than that. Reality works better when conscious, deliberate attention is paid to it. Weaving is a form of magic that requires depth and intensities of attention that reality responds well to. It's a bit like stroking a cat. Weave, and the universe purrs. It may roll about in charming ways for your delight and amusement. It may also try and bite your hand off. As far as I can tell, it doesn't really matter what you weave, because weaving requires certain things of you. There are no stories about evil weavers. Sure, there are people who are greedy, mean-spirited, grasping, controlling, and otherwise unpleasant who try to get into weaving, but this goes one of two ways. Cooperation is a fundamental principle not only of human culture but of all reality. Molecules are cooperatives, so are galaxies, and all things in between. You can't weave uncooperatively, it just doesn't work. So people intent on being selfish and unpleasant tend not to develop much skill as weavers, and are thus of no consequence. People who are determined to weave learn the magics of cooperation and are changed by that. Either way, it all works out nicely in the end. The only thing that doesn't work is not having weavers, and this is where I hope you come in. Also, I realise there's now every chance you've figured out what I'm doing. That weavers are often tellers of stories, because it's such a tidy way of aligning will and action. That I was telling this story all along because I want to open you up to the possibility of becoming a weaver yourself. And if not that, then some other magical, needful thing. I wonder where Series 3 will take us all.